already, where we've come from, and then actually be talking about what we're doing next, which is the net zero organics. So organics waste has been included in the net zero plan. It's the commitment is for net zero emissions from organics waste by 2030, and it's taking organics beyond waste and recycling recovery, like as we all know around the whole circular economy concepts, but also as a climate action as well too, which is good news for the industry and good news for the opportunities. We always knew, I think, those of us that work in this field, that there was always more to it than that we were reducing emissions, that we were improving soil health, but the new programme will really take us there. So that's where we've been. We had 105.5 million, which we've been investing. It finishes next June, yeah, we tackled it from every angle. The bits where I've been particularly working with you and AORA is around the collections and the infrastructure investment, but we've also been working around avoidance with food donation, massively increasing the capacity of the food relief sector, and also love food hate waste as well too, in avoidance education around households and businesses. So that's where the money went, and the map. So this is what's happened in New South Wales over the last 7 years. The 2011 is the base point because that's when we had that data, but the lime green is all the FOGO services that we've rolled out, and as you can see, you know, it really has transformed the map of New South Wales. We've got 50 councils either having it already with FOGO or planning it. And then there's the Sydney there as in the middle there, which is the challenge, you know, and all of that, there's all of those garden only collections happening. Penrith is a FOGO council. We've got a couple of Sydney councils, City of Sydney and Randwick are trialling food only in multi-unit dwellings. But there's the opportunity, there's the 95%. There's still an awful lot, and even within all of those other areas of New South Wales where we've got the services, and they've been supported with new facilities as well. Charlie's building up in Tweed. We've got Shell Harbour and Dubbo and Wagga expanding all of those new facilities. I think it's 28 or 30 new or expanded facilities with our infrastructure funding, and it's increased the capacity of the sector in New South Wales by 600,000 tonnes a year. So we're well placed. So we're well placed now to build on that and to tap into that opportunity, I think, here in New South Wales. But there is a lot more to do. And so, yeah, quickly what we've learned. So around the collections, and there's a lot of data here, and there's a page on our website, EPA/FOGO, which has got these reports on it. We've done a lot of research, we've got a lot of background information. And this is just putting together some of it. So yeah, we know that once you get FOGO in place, people like it. It can take a while. There are some challenges. We've learned a lot around, particularly in the first 12 months, there's resistance to putting the red bin fortnightly. There can be resistance in certain pockets of the community, concern about additional costs. They're there, but in all of the FOGO services that we've rolled out with our funding, that after a year, it beds down, the community accept it, it's good. On average, yeah, we're recovering 44% of available food, and that's the other piece of the puzzle in the extra numbers in getting to the 95%. 57% with the best bin configuration, which is a weekly FOGO and a small fortnightly red bin. And we know from our data, the smaller the available red bin space, the bigger the recovery of the food in the green bin. But 57% with best bin configuration, which is actually pretty good for what is effectively a new recycling service. Like the yellow bin recovery is 63% or something. You know, we are getting volumes, but we need to do more, and that's our new campaign that we're currently testing at the moment in Clarence Valley, Kempsey, and Forbes, which is solely to get more of that food out of the red bin and into the green bin. And I've got one of the videos later if I've got time to show you. Yeah, and that's to sort of help overcome those barriers to efficiency. Average contamination of 2.2% and up to 90% with none at all. I mean, and that's another challenge. This particular education program isn't tackling contamination, but I'm hoping that we can build on it and leverage it to get people to really understand what's happening and embracing the service. And one of the themes of that campaign is that it's that community social norming around it. And, you know, we're not there yet in New South Wales by any means. And most people you talk to in Sydney have no idea about FOGO. They don't even know that you can put food in the green bin because they don't do it. It's not something that happens. And so, but in all of those regional communities, they do it, and that's perfectly normal, and they really like it, and they can't believe it when you come to Sydney and you've got to put your food in the red bin. So anyway, The other really interesting thing about the analysis that we did is that FOGO improves the performance in the yellow bin and reduces generation. And those figures, this is from a red bin audit analysis, which is on our website. So this is the generation rate since 2011. And again, 2011 was the baseline where we had that original data. So as you see, the generation rate in Sydney has gone up. And we mapped it against the levy areas in 2011 so that we could have a reasonable comparison. Yeah, and so the extended regional area in the regulated region, which is the regions, basically, it's gone down. But look, FOGO, less than 6.5 kilograms per bin per week in the red bin when you've got a FOGO service, that's average. And yeah, the research, we did social research to understand why people weren't using the bin to its full capacity. And that was around lack of knowledge about what happened to it, what you guys do with it, and how it ends up on farm, lack of knowledge that it could take everything. You know, this assumption that it could only take the same thing as your home compost bin, it couldn't take bones or fish or anything. And also the yuck factor, you know, I don't want that bin and it's going to smell, or I don't like the idea. So these were the key barriers that we're trying to overcome with this campaign. So market development. So as part of the, you know, as well as having the collections funding, I didn't mention it. I think there was one bit on infrastructure there. It wasn't very much on infrastructure. One of the main things was it takes ages to get a facility up and running, that the planning controls are challenging. I might be on this slide actually. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it takes a long time to build a processing facility is one of the things that we learn. Oh, wow, goodness me. Yes, almost as long as it takes to get the planning approvals. Yes, so that's the thing. So we have learned, yeah, the goal of our market development component, which of that 105 million was 7.5 million in total, was to ensure enough demand for the new supply generated. We knew with the curbside collections, we were obviously going to be increasing the supply, and with the processing capacity, that increasing that supply, but making sure there were markets for it. And in terms of that, we have succeeded. But yeah, demand is meeting supply. That's the figure. We had Marsden, Jacobs and Associates. They did a market analysis in 2016 and then a follow-up now in 2018, and that a summary of that will be on our website shortly, but it's effectively recognizing with mass loss through processing that yeah, there is that the same findings, I think, from that AORA report, really, that's not an issue, particularly with quality product. So those are some of the projects that we've supported, and over the next 6 months we're going to be taking that information and tailoring the resources for the customers, because that's one of the things that yeah, there's still really low awareness of the product and its potential. One of the things that's really driving increased awareness, though, is this opportunity for carbon sequestration, and the new gas-led energy recovery thing, including as it does the carbon sequestration component, apparently has really driven a lot of interest from the farmers around understanding more about it. So over the next 6 months, we're going to be developing more resources, accessible resources, to sort of try and educate different consumer groups, whether it's the grain growers or whether it's mushroom growers, to the potential for compost in their products, and working with those grantees. I'm thinking Elizabeth, I'm thinking Angus, there's probably others here that we're doing to, you know, really kind of make sure that the findings of that work gets to where it needs to, which is actually the customers. But I'm hoping with net zero and with the carbon sequestration potential that's going to create a sufficient pull, continue that pull for demand, that means that we can you know, it really kind of like work on the quality and the tailored product and making sure, you know, the effectiveness of that to really establish the long-term viability of recycling, you know, household food and garden waste and business food waste, and getting it back on soils. Already flagged the challenges with infrastructure. I mean, the infrastructure program has been very good, but yeah, it's just been, yeah, it's just great that it's been complemented. The new services were complemented with new facilities, and then, yeah, that's one of my things, knowing in all of those communities that their management of organics waste is sustainable. It's there now, you know, they've got the capacity and they've got the collections to have it happening, and it will be benefiting soils. So now for net zero, these are the key policy drivers that are happening. I would have, the 20-year waste strategy is going to be obviously the critical policy umbrella for New South Wales, and that's the draft is expected to be released early in the new year. But we've also got the net zero commitment in the net zero plan that was released in March. We're also, the National Food Waste Strategy, we're committed to halving food waste by 2030, and been working closely with the federal government and all the other jurisdictions and the Fight Food Waste CRC to support that work on a national level. And other areas as well too, like the national standards that the federal government is working on through the National Waste Policy and Action Plan. And then the circular economy strategy as well too. Just going on to this one, so this is, there's a lot there in terms of the policy directions. And, we've in our own, for the team, and I'd just like to introduce Lauren, by the way. She's new in my team. She just started 2 weeks ago, completely new to organics and waste, but her background is climate policy and renewables and emission work. So she's our net zero coordinator, and she'll be doing a lot of the work that we need to do in the next 6 months around, crunching the numbers and kind of aligning all of these different aspects of it. And she's in Lake Macquarie, Angus. Could have a coffee with her one day, that would be really nice actually, and fill her in on everything. That would be great. Not that I haven't, mind you, I haven't stopped talking about it since she joined us, but it's only been 2 weeks. Anyway, as you'll see, so the 20-year waste strategy, that is going to have the policy parameters, and there we're looking at things like increasing the food donation from supermarkets. At the moment, only about 8% of food is donated. Woolworths has now committed to zero food waste by 2025, looking at supporting source separation from all of those major businesses, larger businesses, starting with hospitality and institutions, basically. Actually, I think I'll go into that a bit more detail in a minute. And the whole circular economy approach and supporting that increased source separation from businesses through programs like Sustainability Advantage and Neighbours, our Neighbours rating program, which to sort of measure. And so things like the institutions will be aged care, hospitals, prisons, so on. The net zero emissions plan takes that just a little bit further. So that's actually then taking us to be looking at things like landfill gas capture, of which we've already identified. I mean, the data for that is just minimal, really. I mean, there's the ENGA's reporting that the landfills do. It's actually an area obviously I've not been involved in landfills. I've been involved in recycling, organics recycling sort of facilities. But again, while we'd love to capture 95% and get 95% of those organics out of landfill, which will be our work done, because the target's about net zero from landfill, obviously any residuals and any legacies and how we're going to manage that through gas capture. Also taking all of our work higher up the supply chain through the avoidance actions. So that's like the valorization opportunities for food waste. And again, through source separation, what can be done with that waste before it becomes a waste. So that would potentially limit the supply that's coming into the organics industry, but I think there's more than enough. We're going to need to have a really diverse approach to all of these things if we're going to get there. And then other areas around net zero. So things like working with supermarkets, things like energy efficient chillers and energy efficiency, which obviously reduces food waste through the supply chain by improved efficiency higher up the supply chain. And again, the carbon sequestration story as well too. So, we've never gone there. Is that telling me I haven't got long? We've never actually measured, we never sort of said, if you apply this compost to land, these are the emissions benefits, but we will start talking about that, and also working with councils. So many councils in New South Wales have already got net zero plans, how collecting their organics waste is going to start aligning with the net zero directives they have. And then again, and we'll probably start this work in about 22, 23, is the National Food Waste Strategy. So that's actually all about avoidance higher up the supply chain, and again really ramping up those opportunities for valorization, remanufacturing. There was an excellent presentation yesterday from New South Wales Circular about those opportunities for all this work that's currently underway about different uses for food waste and so on, different opportunities for cosmetics and stuff. So that type of working higher up the supply chain and the voluntary agreement, which is a national proposal through the national body where all of the major retailers and brands will be committed to halving food waste, and us working with them then to help them achieve that. A lot of that will be including collections and recycling, but it's not actually counted as part of that 50% goal. So avoidance is going to be probably the latter stage actually of what we do. We've got a lot still to do around the diversion from landfill to achieve the net zero goal before we can go there. So I will quickly go through these because they're a bit, and there's a lot of information on that, but that's an example of all of the different areas around avoidance that we're exploring at the moment. We will be focusing in on those that are going to give us the biggest bang for our buck in terms of the emission reductions. But again, taking us higher up the supply chain, working with households. The household component is around potentially things like the net zero home, where recycling your food waste is part of a commitment to net zero, along with your electric car and your solar panels on your roof and your energy efficient appliances. So putting food waste within the context of those opportunities. Collections and infrastructure, that's a bit more detail about, and I'm happy to distribute these slides, by the way, more details about the focus areas for that, which is the hospitality and the institutions. Our role in that, which is the piece of work that we'll be looking at over the next 6 months, we've got to prepare a draft delivery plan by February and a final by May. We'll be looking at what support that we will be providing. We're going to be making a bid for funding through the 20-year waste strategy process, and there's a indicative figure in the net zero plan of 100 million. So I'm hoping that we'll get another 100 million, which will be over 10 years, which will include continuing support for things like infrastructure, the bins, the processing equipment, and also education. And around things like higher up the supply chain, supporting businesses with audits and avoidance education as well too. And the households, so yeah, that's increasing source separation from households going to be critical, and Sydney, as you saw from the map, is a good potential. We've got the $12.5 million funding for collections that's going till 2022 with through the AWT transition package. And also, multi-unit dwellings. There are challenges, and it's not going to be easy, and we recognise that. We recognise that there's going to be different solutions for different communities. We really want to work with local government to make that happen. And as part of the AWT package, there was a council transition fund, which has now got a lot of local councils in Sydney looking at feasibility studies for FOGO and actually crunching the numbers and looking at the implications for them. So that's going to be a really good foundation point for where we take it from here. And additional infrastructure investment to get to that capacity, to get to that 95% in the next few years. But yeah, so our capacity is good and better than it was 5 years ago, but there's still a long way to go. And if we're going to do all this, we're going to need more other options as well too. And then in terms of end uses, these are the 4 areas of action. So yeah, it's collections, infrastructure, avoidance. End uses, that's around tapping into that's around the carbon sequestration opportunities. And there's a program under Net Zero called PIPAP, which is primary industries and agricultural productivity. And that's being led by DPI, but also with our climate policy team. And that's really looking at, you can see there's the point. So commercializing low emissions technology, but working with sectors to achieve net zero, where we can come in around the contribution that recycled organics and composting soils makes to that. They're also looking at things like, with the carbon sequestration, connecting smaller landholders to the carbon markets, projects like that will be happening. And as that's currently in a really early stage of development. And I think it could be a really good thing to get those guys to come and talk to you once that program's been more laid out, because I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities then to tap into that in terms of, expanding your markets, particularly obviously in agriculture. Textiles, I've just flagged that there because that's the other bit. Part of net zero is net zero emissions from textiles, and that's been given to the organics team to start that exploration, even though 60% of textiles is plastic. And I think, Charlie, you've been you've been consulted as well too in terms of, you know, how that fits into the organics industry. I think we are looking at other opportunities, things like product stewardship schemes and education, but I don't think that's something that we'll be leading because it's not organic, and there's some multiple challenges, but we are developing as part of our delivery plan is what we're going to do with textiles as well too. So next step. So yeah, I've just flagged that timing before. We've actually secured the budget that came out a couple of weeks ago, confirmed our own team funding, I suppose, till June 2022. It's just operational. We haven't got any more grant money. Waste Less, Recycle More wraps up, as I say, on the 30th of June. It gives us flexibility to continue some of those projects that have been delayed because of COVID and drought and everything into the next financial year. But over the next 18 months, we're going to be evaluating those grant programs, wrapping that up, taking the best of them to incorporate into what we do for net zero. Also, looking at that, taking everything that we do and putting it through an emissions reduction lens and a circular economy lens so that we can sort of elevate all of the programs to have those more definite outcomes. And the federal action, I think there's a lot happening on the federal level at the moment that will drive a lot of this change for us as well too. We don't really need to be doing it ourselves in New South Wales, and I'm absolutely wholeheartedly supportive of the idea of national consistency around all of these things for avoidance all the way through to recycling and reapplication to land. So that national work I think is going to be really important. And then this FOGO education deep dive, so that's what we called it. We pulled together all of the FOGO councils into a working group. We social researched all of the households to find out what they were doing, what their attitude was, and then we've developed this campaign, and hopefully it won't be too long if I can, and if this works. So we developed the three key messages. One was what happens to it, which is the first of the 45-second videos, which is like it gets turned into compost. This second one is like everything goes in, it's a comprehensive service. And then the third one is about this is what we do as a community. And it was supported with things like stills and 15-second social media things. And the councils have all done different things. That's, local government. The idea is that we give them the resources like the TOSSA campaign, and then they can use it in whatever way they like. And we did pre bin by bin audits and post bin by bin audits are happening now. So we've actually got the numbers on how much extra food is coming out of the red bin and going into the green. But I'll just play this one.
Scrap! There's plenty of it, and it all goes here in your green lid bin. All your food scraps, just chuck them in. All your meat and bone scraps, chuck them in. All your fish and seafood scraps, chuck them in too. Even that dairy scrap, in she goes. Wrap them up, or give your bin a little wash now then, so it doesn't smell like scrap. When you got your scrap sorted, it all makes its way here at professionally treated compost. So New South Wales, let's get our scrap together.
There you go. So if that works in terms of what its goal is, then the aim would be that we'd offer that to all councils, and that would be the start of what we can hopefully build on in terms of things like contamination management as well too, as a curbside campaign. So I think that's me done, actually. Thanks. I think I probably was a bit longer. Oh, sorry. Right. Thank you. Anyway, there you go.